Okay, good evening everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Ms Stewart and I'm the Deputy Head of Primary. We'll also be joined today by Jared Robson, who is the Assistant Head of Seniors, and Lisa Skinner, who is the lead nurse practitioner of our school. This is the second in the series of the WellBeing presentations. The first one, which was run last week, was about internet safety. So after that, we thought it was really appropriate to look at motivation, you know, how to keep the children motivated whilst they're still at home under the stressful circumstances of COVID. We'll also be looking at exam stress and how to deal with that for the senior pupils. So please feel free to jump in and out if you want to. The first part may focus a little more on primary, but will still be relevant for the older pupils. The middle, then we will hand over to Lisa, who will talk us through a wonderful programme that we'll be running shortly within the school for wellbeing. And then we'll move on to the senior exam stress part of the presentation. There will also be a recording of the presentation that will be put onto the website. So if for any reason you need to leave, you can catch up with the rest of it on the website. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So one really important thing is structure. It's a massive change for our pupils who are used to coming to school 5 days a week. To be expected to stay home some of those days. It's also a big change for the parents. We appreciate that. If the pupils were in school, they would be given a full-time timetable, which you can see on the screen now. We've adapted this one so it's got the days at school and the days at home. It might be a really useful thing to do if you haven't already done that, just so that the children can see exactly what they're expected to do on each day, and they've got that overview of the week as well. A nice way to make this work is to get the children to help to create the timetable. They're more likely to stick to it if they've had an input in creating it. Another really important thing is to set timings. So at school, if, say, for example, a child didn't complete their English lesson within the allotted time, we wouldn't keep them in all day to finish that lesson. We've had some parents saying, you know, they're working right into the evening to get all of this work done, there's too much work. And we quite simply say to that, please don't do that. That is not the expectation. That will cause you stress, that will cause the children stress. So it's completely fine for you to set that time. You know, you've got 50 minutes for this lesson, for example. Once that time is up, then the lesson finishes. If they haven't completed, that then helps the teacher to see that maybe the work needs to be adjusted a little, or we need to give more time for those sorts of activities. Have a clear difference as well, if possible. I know it's not always possible, but in workspaces. So have a space where the children can know that's where they do their work, and then a separate space where they know that it's relaxed time, it's downtime, or it's play time. Also give them regular breaks like they would get in school. We can't work all day, you can't work all day. So it's really, really important to have that. Another thing on the timetable, you might have, your children might be working independently at some times, and then you might be able to help them, or some home help or siblings. If you put that onto the timetable so that they know specific times when there's going to be somebody there who can be helping them out, then that would be really, really effective as well. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. We've all heard a lot of parents all around the world, my friends in the UK, saying the same thing, that during lockdown it was incredibly stressful for parents having children at home and the expectations to teach them. You know, you're having to look at the curriculum, there's so much to do, you've still got your own jobs, possibly working from home as well. it can be quite a stressful time, and also quite likely to become a negative time. And the first thing that happens with that is our language changes, and we use a lot of kind of negative language. And rather than saying the behaviours that we want to see, we focus on the behaviours that we don't. So a classic in school is you'll hear a teacher or a teaching assistant saying down the corridor, "Don't run." So what we've done there is tell the children what we don't want them to do. The child has heard run. That's the main word that they've heard there. So rather than "don't run," we would try and say "please walk." So they know that's the behaviour that we're looking for. So at home, it might be something like, "please put your clothes away," rather than "don't make a mess." And when you're approaching schoolwork in a similar way, just try and be mindful of your language and what the children are actually hearing in that. Again, keeping a nice calm voice will help to keep the situation nice and calm for you and the children. Setting realistic goals and expectations as well. So it might be that, as I said before, that you're also working at home. It is an unrealistic expectation that a young child will stay quiet all day. It's more realistic that they might be able to stay quiet for, say, 20 minutes while you're on an important work call. They can succeed at that. So setting those setting those expectations really clearly and realistically. The same with the amount of work that we're expecting children to be able to do. Let's not try and say, "okay, we've got to get all of this done within an hour." You know, spread out the time and make it realistic. An obvious one, giving praise where praise is due. It might be that they've been able to do something to a really high standard, or it might be something that they've really struggled with, or you've been busy and they've needed to just get on with on their own. So giving them praise for that. "Well done, you know, you got on with that." Even if they haven't been able to do the activity, do all of the activity, it's still praising them for having a go when it was a little bit difficult. One huge thing that has been so different for our children at the moment is socializing. And obviously that, as a child, is a huge part of your social and emotional development. Children haven't been able to socialize in the same way. And that can be stressful, and that can impact motivation, because they're having those things to look forward to. At school, they see their friends, they go out to play and have their own time. They're not able to go out to play at the moment. So it's finding ways around that. So maybe having families that you can do socially distanced activities with in a sensible way, or video calls between pupils, or letting them do voice notes to another people on your phone or on their own phones. But having that contact in a safe way is something that we haven't necessarily had to think about before in the same way, because children have been able to come together. Okay, next slide, please. Again, another important one to keep children motivated. A lot of the time when they're working at home, we appreciate they will be on their own. They'll be working hard, they'll be looking at a screen, and then working independently, maybe getting a little bit of support here and there, but a lot more than they ever were before. So I imagine by the end of that day, they are just absolutely craving some one-to-one attention, some adult attention, some peer attention. But a nice idea, and the pictures to the left have largely been taken from a UNICEF document. I can post the link. But a nice idea in that is that you get to spend, say, about 20 minutes quality time with each of your children after they've done their school day, when they've been working at home. I thought that was a really nice idea. Obviously not always possible, especially if you've got lots of children. Completely understand that. So then it could be a kind of a joint activity. But within that, letting the children have some sort of say in the activity that they'd like to do. it might be that they'll need a little bit of support with that at the moment, because they might come up with ideas that we're not able to do because of social distancing restrictions or things that are closed. And a big part of this is to try and have no devices. So switch off the phone, switch off the Wi-Fi, no emails. This makes a huge difference. I remember my niece, it was her 5th birthday, so she was only 4 at the time, and planning her 5th birthday, and her mum said to her, what would you like to do for your birthday? You can do anything you like. And I can't remember what she came up with, watch a movie or something. It wasn't anything big, but she came up with this idea. And then she said, Mummy, can we have no phones? And that was a 4-year-old. I just thought that was really, really telling. I mean, she's 14 now and we can hardly get her off her phone, but that's a different story. But it is really, really important to young children and teenagers to have your quality time and attention. And listening as well. When you're also looking at a phone, you're not fully listening, or if you're reading an email, you haven't got that full attention, so you can't listen properly. And that's really, really important, especially when a child has been on their own for most of the day and expected to be independent. I imagine that they will just want to talk to you about anything and nothing, which can be a little bit full on sometimes when you've got your own things going on and you're trying to work and run the house and look after all of your children, and they just want to talk about the colour of their socks or something really random, and it just keeps going on and on. But listening to those little things are important, because if they know that you care about the little things, then they're more likely to trust you with the big things. So that one's a really important one. Okay, next slide, please. And then carrying on with talking about COVID. So we're still in the middle of this situation, even though the restrictions are lifting, it's all getting a little bit easier. It is still there and the effects are still happening. It's been a huge change for children, and sometimes I think we assume that they know more or that they understand more than they possibly do, because it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. It's all over the news, the TV, social media. So we just assume that children will understand the ins and outs of it, but actually they might have some big misconceptions and some misunderstandings about it. So it's important to be honest and frank when they ask you a question, and that will help ease their concerns. Also, another quite a sad one really, some misconceptions that children are having and worries about being labelled as somebody who's had COVID. So some children are becoming quite anxious that if they get it, people will think they're dirty, or people will think that they're rule breakers, and that really worries them. And another one is that there's been some information and some misinformation about the types of people that will have COVID, or different groups of people that will have COVID, and obviously that's going to raise all sorts of prejudices that we absolutely don't want to be happening. So it's about speaking to our children and being empathetic, telling them about being empathetic and sympathetic towards people who are sick, sick in different ways, but specifically COVID-19 at the moment. So yeah, talk, a really, really important one. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the final part of my part of the presentation. I just wanted to touch on what we're doing in school to help people well-being. We're really fortunate. We've got their pictures are on there. We've got 3 brilliant nurses who work with us in school, and they are really, really dedicated and really passionate about people well-being. And they wanted to be able to do something throughout the whole school, so right from the young children up into seniors, to help with wellbeing, specifically for COVID-19 and all of the different worries and concerns that come along with that. So they've been working together and working with the Mentally Well Schools programme to put this programme together, and this is something that's going to be running in school. The staff are going to be running it with the pupils to really help at school and at home with wellbeing. So now I'm going to pass over to Lisa, and she's going to be explaining a little bit more about it. So next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Lisa, and I'm the lead nurse practitioner at ParkHouse English School. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of a new programme we're going to be introducing with children throughout the schools called Worry and Wellbeing Programme. This will just be a brief introduction to show you why we're doing it and what we're going to be covering and how long it's going to take. This is being produced by a company from the UK called Mentally Well Schools. It's being used internationally at the moment during the COVID-19 pandemic and is being shown to be very effective. So being mentally well and focusing on our well-being is especially important in any child's development. This is heightened, especially now within the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of our students' families would have been affected by some form of the pandemic, whether it was just being locked down, not being able to go to school, not being able to see their friends, actually experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, having to isolate, being hospitalised, or unfortunately even perhaps even knowing someone who has been seriously ill and has passed away from COVID-19. This is why we really need to address the situation and focus on the children's mental health. Here's a classic quote here from Marie Dahl, who's head of the Save the Children's Mental Health and Psychology Unit. While children are resilient, we cannot underestimate the impact that the pandemic is having on their mental well-being and overall health. If left unaddressed, this could escalate depression and other mental health concerns. The mental health impacts of COVID-19 could be seen far beyond the life of the pandemic. This is going back to what we were saying before. It's especially important now to everyone is coming back to school. Most of the children are back, and we need to start addressing issues that would have occurred during lockdown and are still ongoing. Everyone worries about discussing about mental health and sees it as things are not to be discussed and are worried about the connotations associated with it. This is something we need to bring to the forefront now, and we need to address, and we need to not be afraid to talk about our emotions and talk about the way we feel. So children display signs of worry and distress and anxiety differently to those commonly associated with adults. When we're talking about children, we're also including adolescents. We have a list of behaviours here that are often associated with bad behaviour and being naughty. But actually, when we break things down and look at them, they're actually keys that the children are actually undergoing psychological distress. So the top one on the list here is separation or anxiety. This is one's most commonly seen currently at the moment at school. Children are obviously being with family members and parents since March when we locked down. Then obviously we had the summer holidays, and now we're obviously the school is now building up strongly back up to we're up to 50%. These children are, have got used to being with family members and being at their home, so now moving away from that family centre is now causing a lot of children distress. We're seeing toileting accidents and possible bedwetting is another commonly associated sign, and more frequently needed to go to the toilet. This is a very common symptom that we're seeing that teachers are exhibiting in classes at the moment. School refusal. Some children are still worried that they are going to catch COVID-19. There is other ongoing concerns. Excessive need for reassurance. Complaints of physical ailments is another common thing we see, which is associated with anxiety and stress within school. Some children will complain of a headache, sore tummies, when actually the underlying problem is they're anxious. Difficulties with concentration and attention. Defiant behaviour and angry outbursts. Again, you would commonly associate that with being naughty and being defiant. Obsessive compulsive behaviours such as washing hands is very common at the moment, as well as overusing hand sanitizer lotion. Clinginess, quiet, withdrawn, and then obviously move on to the more serious elements of sort of lying and stealing, which unfortunately can then move on to low self-esteem and self-recrimination, and then self-harm if this is not addressed in the early stages. So to help children overcome the issues that we have discussed previously, we're going to be introducing the COVID Worry and Wellbeing Programme. Okay, this is to help the children improve their mental well-being and to give them techniques to how to manage at times when they be areas of stress and when they become worried. This programme incorporates 15 lessons, so it will take us 15 weeks as we will do once a week. They will be 20 to 30-minute sessions, with the goal being to improve the mental health and to help us stay happy and well at school and at home. Now here we're encompassing at home. Yes, the session is going to be done in school, but there will be little activities for the children to do at home. But this will be including things like practicing techniques we have given them to help them remain calm, to deal with areas of stress, colouring in, those sorts of things. So it's not going to be anything taxing for them. It should be fun and very helpful for them. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the strategies that we are going to be teaching the children, which is covered in the Mentally Well Schools programme. All these activities are evidence-based and have been shown to be very effective and helping reduce anxiety and stress in children. So many of our activities are going to include mindfulness. Now, many of you may have heard of mindfulness. It's a practice that is used for many adults in dealing with stress and anxiety. We're going to be using gratitude diaries, journals, and we're also going to be practicing and teaching children about daily worry time. Now, worry time, everyone hears about that and also they automatically worry. And because we think we don't want our children to worry. And you're quite right, I'm one of those parents that don't want my children to worry. But it's been demonstrated that if our children are not allowed to worry and deal with the worry, this is when the small things become big and they become unmanageable for children. So having a daily worry time, which the children will be taught about, is being able to write their worry down, and then either in a journal for the older children, or putting it in the worry jar, or even writing their worry down and putting it into a worry monster, helps them write down their worry and put it away. So that they're dealing with it, they're thinking about the worry at the time, but then they're allowed to put the worry away, and then the worry is not carried with them for the rest of the day. And if they want, they can revisit the worry at another time to discuss it and come back to it. We're going to be reflecting on changes, obviously lots of changes at the moment, so the children, we're going to learn a good technique of reflection and what they did before and what's different now. Learning how anxiety and worry feels in their bodies. Many children obviously don't know what anxiety and worry feels like, so it's trying not to put a name on it and just try to discuss about our feelings and what it comes out in our bodies as. Practicing acceptance of self and self-compassion, so in allowing us to be kind to ourselves and kind to each other. Practicing kindness towards others, distinguishing between things that they can and cannot control. That's a big thing with children. Many children panic at things they cannot control. Adults exactly this. Many adults are exactly the same. So it's looking at those issues, recognizing unhelpful thoughts and thinking patterns. Learning a range of other healthy coping skills as well to develop their own skills toolkit. Many of these skills and strategies will not be appropriate for everyone. They won't be, some things will be better than others. And this is what this programme will do, is open up to a range of activities that the children can then actually pick and choose what works for them. Some are also more appropriate for younger ones and older ones. So not all the students will do all the activities. We will, the sessions before, we will then decide what programmes are more age appropriate for each student and each class. But they'll all be covering the same materials. So the COVID Worry and Wellbeing programme will be delivered to years 1 and up into secondary school. There is another programme that will hopefully launch next year that is due to be released for the younger ones in early years. And there's also a second programme which is in its final stages of completion that is specifically for the older students in secondary school as well. So that will be, as soon as that is released, we'll be launching that for the secondary students and for the older secondary students. The programme will be delivered by the PE staff in primary, and in secondary it will be delivered by the tutors. Okay, to draw my little brief session to an end, we will be sending out a COVID worry and wellbeing programme parent information leaflet. So that will be emailed out to you all shortly. If anyone would like any more information, please don't hesitate to look at on the link below at the Mentally Well Schools programme, and you'll see what we are going to be delivering. If anyone has any concerns or any issues with their children and you would like to speak to the school nurses, please don't hesitate to be in contact. But there's 3 of us on duty most times. You can either call us through the main switchboard of the Park House School, or you can email us at nurse@parkhouseschool.com. Many thanks for listening. Keep safe, everyone.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jared Robson, Assistant Head in the Secondary School. I'm going to be talking to you tonight how we can help young students cope with the pandemic with a special slant on exam stresses. So, anxiety is a common theme for students to suffer during normal times, especially at the moment with the pandemic going on. Student well-being, it's really paramount. We've got mental health issues, stress, depression, well-being, lots of different situations. And in this presentation, I'm going to be offering some suggestions and guidance on how we can best support our young people. So it's important to remember that young people are quite resilient anyway, probably more than we give them credit for. In most cases, they can cope with these stresses pretty well. However, some students find exams stressful, and with the COVID-19 pandemic as well, they're going to find it even more stressful. So research shows that parental support during difficult times is linked with better performance. This means checking in with your children to see how they're doing, and then empowering them to make, to use the skills that they've got and they've built up in the arsenal. So what we need to avoid as parents and teachers is to avoid a high monitoring and low autonomy style. And basically what we mean by that is by controlling what they're doing closely and then deciding for them and taking over and not empowering them to make the decisions. So that could be, talking over them, deciding for them, making their choices, criticising the strategies that the child is trying. Instead, what we need to do is believe in the children's ability to cope with the situation. So things or strategies we can do to help with this is we can ask them, we say, how are you coping? Ask them, sit down, and we need to listen to the answers and make sure that we're giving them the time that they deserve. And sometimes what I use with students to just to show that we are listening to them is I use the ask twice strategy. So I'll ask them, how are you doing? Right, are you really okay? Is there anything I can help with? So you're not just one word answers, you really delve in, and that shows to the young people that you really care and that you're there to really support them. And listen to them and make sure your actions are guided by their response, and don't be frightened to say to them, right, give me a little bit of time to think about that and I'll come back to you on that one. The common one is you ask them what they're doing, what have you been doing at school, and you get the I don't know answer. I used to get that with my daughter all the time. She used to come home from school. I'd say, right, what have you done today at school? I don't know. Well, what have you been doing? Or just stuff. So then I started to choose my wording carefully. So then I used to say to her, right, name 3 things you've been doing at school today. And then she went, well, I've done this in maths, and I've done that in science, I've done this in English. And that develop the conversation a bit more. And another technique you can use, you can say, well, what's the favourite thing you've done at school today? What's the least favourite thing you've done at school today? You know, and again, if they can't think there on the spot, don't be trying to use the thinking time technique with them. Say to them, right, I'll come back to you in 5 minutes. I'll come back to you tomorrow. Don't be frightened to do that. So what we need to do with young people is we need to encourage exercise, things like sport, walking, family walks. Sport is well known to release endorphins, which releases feel-good chemicals into the brain, which helps with concentration levels and mental health. Give them downtime. That can include video games, computer games. Obviously, you know, when I was a child, it was going out and playing football and sport and going out. But it's different now. My young nephew, he's got his headset on. He's on computer games. He's speaking to people all over the county, the country during the pandemic when he couldn't go out. He's talking to people, interacting. He's solving problems. So I think video games has got its place, got its time, as long as it's controlled. They need downtime, so hanging out with the friends, making sure they catch up with them, they go for coffees, they go to the malls, and sleep as well. Children need a minimum of 8 hours sleep. I think I certainly need a minimum of 8 hours sleep, and I'm an adult, so children definitely need a minimum of 8 hours of sleep. And that might involve being tough with them. For example, taking off their devices so they can't be interrupted in the, you know, when they go into sleep. They might start talking to a friend and get excited, and then they wake up halfway through the night because they've got notifications. So at the very least, make sure notifications off. You're using some sort of family sharing mechanism, so you can control how much time they've got and what they can access. And you know, if necessary, you just make them hand your phone before they go to bed and give them back the next morning, so they ensure they're getting that good 8 hours sleep. Change of scene, it's good to get out. So we can do things like going out for a walk again. We can go for, you know, go to the mall, just getting out the house, changing the scene, developing good routines. Young people need routines, so make them timetables. It can't just be work. Some of the girls at the moment we've got, because they're just working, they're getting burnt out, they're getting fatigued. It's not healthy. You need a balance. You need to make sure that you are balancing exercise, eating, family time, friendship time, studying. It's got to all be balanced out. And I encourage, like what Anna was saying earlier on, making little timetables and sticking to them. And you know, you do a few hours study, or you do a block of study for an hour, then you have a bit of exercise, and then you come back to it afterwards, and you've got to reward the hard work that you put in. And again, as we said earlier, just make sure about reduced screen time. There's night vision on mobile phones now, so it dims the screens, so it starts to set the brain into relaxed mode, and perhaps even take mobile phones off them an hour before going to sleep, so the brain can start focusing. And if you do that on regular routines, I'm sure that, you know, that has got to be a good thing. It's been lonely during the pandemic for everybody, and friendships are critical. Now, you know, friendships really help during times of stress. You know, if you can meet up in person, that's really good. I think that's good. But don't be frightened if, you know, if it's an online chat, that's better than nothing. But be aware of the risks. We don't want children being dragged down by other children's problems, their friends, they're not counsellors. So make sure that you know, you understand the risks and that there is a good balance. And if there's academic concerns, then this is where, you know, you've got to speak to your teachers. Teachers don't go into it for the money. They go into it because they want to help people. That is why we go to work, because we like helping people. Children come to us with problems. We are there to help. That's our, you know, that is what we're there for. So they've got to come and ask us about anything academic. So rehearsal technique, you know, avoid just reading books when it comes to revision. It's been proven that if you just read, and that's your revision, it's a very inefficient memory strategy. It's you know, it's better than nothing, but it's nowhere near as efficient as being active and doing active study. And from active study, what we mean is things like self-assessment. So do quizzes and check the answers, do exams and check the answers, looking at the mark schemes, looking at examiners' comments, use concept maps and knowledge organisers. This actually, you know, with things like dual coding. We've done, I do experiments with the students at school and lessons where we use dual coding, and it is a proven fact that using dual coding helps retention levels. And you know, it's proven to help the brain grow more connections, and it really is a much more effective revision strategy rather than just rehearsal techniques such as just reading a book. It really is. Catastrophic thinking. That's where the students are saying, getting deep thoughts, and they're thinking, oh, what's the point? You know, this is the worst thing ever. I think last year we had there was our studious students who had put lots of effort into revising for these exams, and they got cancelled pretty much at the last minute. That causes major problems. So there's like, you know, lots of negative thoughts on that, and we've got to avoid that. We've got to model hopeful attitudes and coping strategies, and you know. So, for example, if we have that moment, because we all get our moments where we've been tipped over the edge and things are just looking bleak. So at this point, it's time, you know, it's time to take a break. And, for example, go for a walk, do some exercise, go for a run, get a change of scenery, and then come back to it and tackle it again when you're in a different frame of mind. And I think as parents, we've got to, you know, help our young adults, young children, recognise that them thoughts are okay to have. It's normal. We're all going to have our good points and our down points, and you know, it's making sure that we come up with proactive coping strategies. So, for example, the other day I was really stressed out. I had lots of jobs to do. I felt like I had so many plates in the air. So I wrote down exactly what I needed to do. And even writing down what I had to do started to help me to ease. And then I started to tick off some of the jobs I started to do. Another strategy is just talking to somebody. What is it that's really stressing you out? And just talk it through. And even talking it through, it really does help. And you know, we've got to, as parents, as teachers, as people, as staff who work with young children, teenagers, we've got to look out for these the warning signs that there is something not quite right. And you know, this could be, you know, and teenagers are very good sometimes at hiding their feelings. Again, my 16-year-old daughter, she, you know, I say, "Are you all right? I'm fine." And again, using the second ask strategy, are you really fine? How's things going? And then this, you know, you just start to delve a bit deeper. Other signs, they might not be participating in things they usually do, so they withdraw from playing football, they withdraw from going to the mall, they withdraw from meeting up with the friendship groups. As we get to the more serious side of things, weight loss, eating disorders, they're not eating or they are eating and then they go to the toilet and afterwards, and maybe, you know, being sick, lack of sleep, irregular sleep patterns, irritable over minor things. It could be the slightest little thing that sets that teenager off, and you think, well, I didn't say anything there, and it's just that one thing which tips them over the edge. So, you know, in the more serious end of things is we've got self-harming and suicidal thoughts, and at this point, this is where we need to start getting help. Where, you know, now where do you go for help? Now we've got a really strong pastoral team in secondary. There's Mrs. Standen, who's Key Stage 3 leader. We've got Mrs. Legg, who's the Key Stage 4 leader. You've got Mr. Standen and Mrs. Allen, who's Key Stage 5 leader and head of sixth form. You've got myself, who's the assistant head. We've got the school nursing team, Lisa, Lisa's team, who you met earlier on, just before I started speaking. And we've now got CAMS. When I started working at this school, it was really hard to refer students to CAMS in Qatar, but Qatar has really developed the CAMS department now, which is Child, Adolescent, Mental Health Services. And I think, if you know, I'm not saying there's anything good come out of this, but one thing that has come to the forefront with this pandemic is the real need and the real understanding for mental health issues and services. This week alone, Lisa has spoke to parents who were worried about a child and contacted CAMS at the Hamad Hospital, and next week that person has got an appointment. I'm not saying it'll always be that fast, but if you're worried about your child, please speak to Lisa, the school nursing team. The emails are on the next slide, and they will help you get an appointment if it comes, or even talk about whether you think you need that appointment. And likewise, speak to the pastoral team. Every single website is on the school email, school website. And if you're worried, you just might want a conversation, you might just want to run something by, because there's all sorts we can actually do as a pastoral team. For example, we can give timeout cards, we can just make staff aware that there's issues, so we can, you know, we can give people an extra 5 or 10 minutes in a test if they just need to compose themselves. We can get them to do tests in a quiet space like an office or a library. We can talk to them, and again, we can liaise with the school nursing team, so we can, you know, offer. We don't have a counsellor as such at Park House at the moment. This is something we're looking to develop, but we've got Lisa and her team's expertise, which are very, very good. In addition to all of that, we've got websites. We've got a website called Young Minds. I've got a lot of stuff off there. I post a lot of stuff on Teams for students to look at. It is UK based, but there's a lot of good advice on there. I've recently posted something on Teams on all of the key stage teams. So if you want to have a look at that, have a look through your child's Teams account, and there's some good stuff in there. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has some good advice on the pandemic and children. Exam boards do as well. EdXL and Cambridge have both got information on, and there's a website called Mind, which offers a lot of information as well. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully you got a lot of information from that. And you know, it might just be that you want to follow this up with a chat to Anna, the nurse, or myself. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. That's exactly what we're here for, to help, even if it's just to run something by us, or to take matters further and help you. You might have noticed that your child's withdrawn at the moment, and you're just a bit worried, and you just might want to make us aware. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Bye.